It appears that Magnamalo's powerful hypnotism, which caused a spike in Malamar's popularity early in September, has affected more than just the residents of Lumio City. One such victim was a local mid-ladder showdown player, OU forum moderator, and Florida man, 658 Greninja, or Amphibian's Rise Up as he's called on YouTube. It mega-evolved and used its heightened hypnotic abilities to command the 1.9k sub YouTuber to spread the word of Malamar's greatness, quote-unquote. Now, we actually do have audio of Amphibians being interviewed after breaking out of Malamar's hypnotic gaze, so I'm going to play it for you folks.
Yeah, man, I was at a party doing some shots, and then this Malamar mega evolves right in front of me. It does the whole swirly thing with its tentacles, and before I know it, I wake up, hungover. I check my YouTube channel, and I see this video I put up recently, which was just my corny Inside Out 2 review turned into a YouTube poop. It was surreal, because I was saying these things that were straight up cap. Malamar is cool, but I wouldn't say it's my favorite Pokemon. Also, I got some serious backlash because of what I said in the video. It was very controversial. I could play it right now if you want. I never had
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I just want to debunk that statement. I want to put an end to the controversy. I've actually eaten Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It's the best cereal. I have a box in my dorm. Just gotta get milk first. I later found out that Malamar made me say all these things. It was crazy. Stay safe, everyone. This world is wild. You'll never know what'll happen.
That is wild indeed. Anyways, we should be getting back to Pokemon trading card scalper videos now.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Don't need to tell you what Kingambit does, cause everyone who's played a couple games of SVOU knows what Kingambit does. Casual consumers know what Kingambit does. Even the out-of-touch billionaires are aware of what Kingambit's role in SVOU is. Heck, for all we know, they probably got swept by Kingambit at one point. It's one of the most iconic Pokemon in Gen 9 OU, and also one of the most controversial. Since Scarlet and Violet released, players have called for the king to be exiled. An attempt was made in the home metagame, but a slight majority of the voters believed Kingambit was a healthy addition to the tier, and thus it was allowed to prosper for another 2 years. This didn't stop a vocal minority from voicing their concerns for Kingambit abusing its power to sweep through whole teams by itself. But are they exaggerating its threat level? Trend suggests that maybe they are. Kingambit has dropped to S- rank in recent memory in the SVOU viability rankings. While its usage on ladder remains in the top 3, its tournament usage seems to be tanking. Just a little. 9th in usage in SPL, 7th in World Cup and Smoke on Tour. These numbers are still great, but for a Pokemon that was once considered one of the most elite in the metagame, they're underwhelming. Which leads me to believe that Kingambit isn't being banned anytime soon. Let me explain. Players realized that Kingambit is not as unpredictable as it led on to be. Kingambit is locked into Swords Dance and Sucker Punch for slots, meaning you only have 2 extra slots left to work with. This is good on its own, but compare that to other sweepers like Iron Valiant and Dragonite who have more set variants, making Kingambit seem one-dimensional. Oh, and don't worry, we'll get to Dragonite later. This means that Kingambit counterplay is pretty stacked, the most proficient answer to Kingambit being Encore. The move prevents Gambit from ever freely abusing its X Factor. Best case scenario, it will be forced out, and worst case scenario, it'll just lose the game. Encore has always existed in competitive, but due to poor distribution, and also the jank mechanics it used to have, it was often never considered a serious option, until they started giving good Pokemon Encore in Gen 9. Including Dragonite. Yep, there it is! Who else but Dragonite? It's Dragonite, Dragonite. You'll never really know what it's gonna do next. It's Dragonite, Dragonite. Dragonite in particular can take a hit from Kingambit and threaten to lock it into Encore, preventing Kingambit from snowballing in the late game. Does Gambit have a response to this? Well, it can run Mental Herb, preventing Kingambit from being encored once, which is more than enough. But, dear viewer, be real with me. Do you actually use Mental Herb Gambit? You pretty much never see this item on Kingambit because it derives more value off of items like Leftovers, Air Balloon, Lumberry, and Black Glasses. Plus, there's more counterplay to Kingambit outside of this one move. Zamazenta is a popular example and one of the most common mons in tournaments. Iron Press Zama can check almost every Kingambit variant. Lando is a great blanket check to Kingambit in the early to mid game with Intimidate and Rocky Helmet. Corviknight, packing enough speed investment to outrun Adamant Max Speed Kingambit, is a fantastic check with Iron Defense, and thanks to pressure, it can 1v1 Kingambit even with Tera Ghost. Unless the Gambit crits you. Skill issue if that happens, just get luckier. Kingambit could run Jolly to outrun it, but Jolly loses a lot of power it would otherwise have with Adamant, which is why it's not as common as back in 2024. Hisui and Samurott, who resists both its stabs, can use Kingambit as an early entry point for 90% accurate spikes. And it has Encore too, so, yeah. Wisp from Pokemon like Darkrai or Moltres are great at punishing Kingambit. They do have to be mindful of variants with Lumberry or Tera Fire, though. There's also a handful of viable non-OU Pokemon that have generally good matchups into Kingambit. Great Tusk isn't a perfect check since it can lose the 1v1 depending on the Tera, but most of the time it does a ton of damage with Headlong Rush, which can put Kingambit in range of a counterattack from its teammates. But wait, isn't that difficult when Kingambit has a Sucker Punch-shaped gun in its arsenal? Well, you got a very valid point. But on the other hand, shut up! Wait, don't leave, I'm sorry. Kingambit's greatest weapon is also its downfall. Kingambit is built to be slow with great bulk and priority to compensate for that. But if Kingambit is not in a position to tank a hit, then it is heavily reliant on Sucker Punch. This is made more apparent for Gambits that run speed over bulk to outpace certain defensive walls or opposing Kingambits. Pokemon that can tank a +2 Sucker Punch like Dragonite with multi-scale intact, offensive Dark Resists, and Tera Fairy users can all retaliate with big damage, assuming they're all decently healthy. Any Pokemon with priority can pick off a weakened Kingambit, considering all the relevant priority mons outspeed it by a long shot. It's also worth considering that Kingambit's opportunities to set up are shallower than you might think. Kingambit finds entry points from these mons, but it's not entirely safe for Kingambit. Gholdengo is the most relevant one, resisting both its stabs. But Gholdengo can abuse this. A common strategy versus Kingambit is to chip it early on with repeated blows from Gholdengo, and the hazards it's tasked with guarding. Gholdengo has other ways of sabotaging the Tyrant. Scarf variants absolutely ruin it with Trick, and Gold can tech Focus Blast which obliterates it. If you miss, that's a skill issue, just aim better. Metagame trends have also not been pleasant for the King. Offense has resurfaced as one of the most popular archetypes during OLT, resulting in higher usage of Landorus and Cinderace, both of these having favorable matchups into Kingambit. Heatran is projected to rise to OU in the upcoming tier shifts, and it too can threaten Kingambit with Burns or a powerful Magnastorm. Now, can Kingambit respond to its counterplay? Yes, of course, it has Tera after all. Gambit commonly runs 5 Tera types in SVOU for different matchups, and it can be difficult to decipher what Tera it's using. Well, that's all I need to know. I guess Kingambit is broken after all. Now hold that thought. This isn't a unique interaction in SVOU. As a matter of fact, there's several other Pokemon that can trigger this exact scenario, and people aren't complaining about those. Okay, there's certainly those that do, but the point is, while Tera does let you beat your worst matchups, it also leaves you vulnerable to other matchups. Suppose you Tera steal your Calm Mind Iron Valiant to beat this weird looking Peach. Might be a Pecharunt, I don't know. Well, now your Valiant is vulnerable to every earthquake in the game. It's even more vulnerable to fire types, which it already struggled with. And you lose your dual Sucker Punch resistance. What if you were the one that terastalized first? The opponent can then respond with something like Tera fires on Magenta. Interactions like this are why I consider Terastalization a healthy part of SVOU. Pokemon that got banned partially because of Tera have a mix of attributes such as having a speed boosting move, good bulk, and recovery to easily get up multiple boosts, making them harder to revenge kill. Kingambit only has one of these traits. But you know who has all three? Who else but Dragonite? It's Dragonite, Dragonite. You'll never really know what it's gonna do next. It's Dragonite, Dragonite. Okay, so what are Kingambit's Tera types and how do you counter them? Ghost is the most common Tera type you'll find on Kingambit, reversing its matchup with fighting types and blocking Rapid Spin. This is also the best Tera type versus Dragonite. However, becoming a Ghost comes with a grueling cost, leaving you vulnerable to other Dark types, which includes other Kingambits. If it terastalized first, then the native ghosts, Goldango and Petrorunt, can terastalize back to avoid the Sucker Punch KO before blowing it up with their Shadow Balls, or Foul Play in Petrorunt's case. Tera Fire shields Kingambit from burn attempts and grants you a fire resistance, but since most of its checks are ground types or have Earthquake, including Mr. Tusk himself, you'd want to pair it with Balloon. Plus, it does nothing to help you against your greatest enemy, Zamazenta. Tera Flying used to be its go-to in the early days of SVOU, but still sees use here and there. It flips its weakness to fighting and ground, but also leaves it vulnerable to Raging Bull and Zapdos. Tera Dark is used to jack up the power of Kowtow and Sucker Punch. Some people go overboard with Black Glasses, turning Kingambit into a stall-killing machine. It doesn't see that much use these days because of how hard it loses to Zama, and there are other less Tera-reliant ways of breaking stall. Oh, and I can't forget about Tera Fairy. This sees use with Tera Blast to snipe Tusk, Zama, and Tinglu. This one leaves you vulnerable to Steel and Poison types. Though, now that I'm thinking about it, most Steel types either die to Sucker Punch or don't run Stab, so they can't one-shot a healthy Kingambit. And offensive Poison types don't really exist outside of Iron Moth, who has to play Sucker Punch 50-50s, and Glamora, who gets one-shot by +2 Sucker Punch, and usually isn't alive during the late game. I guess there's Okidoki, but Okidoki is like a B-tier mon, so your only options are Scizor or terastalizing your offensive Steel/Poison type. You know what? The takeaway here is that Tera Fairy is broken. They're turning the frickin' Gliscors into fairies. Gee, with all this counterplay and how the meta is going, it seems like Kingambit is washed now, right? No. Kingambit has gotten worse as time went on, but Kingambit is still Kingambit. It can still clutch games. Its role as an offensive ghost type has been replicated, but not perfected like with Kingambit. It also still punishes cheese strats effectively. The point is, Kingambit's still great, just not broken. But what are your thoughts? Do you agree that Kingambit is a healthy presence in the meta? Or do you believe a Paldean revolution needs to take place? Thank you for watching, and remember, Solgaleo is not getting unbanned.
Yay, I love to make my YouTube videos. This isn't my real voice, by the way. I talk like this. I'm a little gnome man. Ooh! Ee! Ah! Ooh! Ooh!